friends, and welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be in conversation with my previous video where I showed you all of the unread books on my bookshelf and talked about how many read versus unread books that I have. So in this video, I'm going to be unhauling some books. So I want to start by talking a little bit about why I'm getting rid of books I haven't read. Just a few years ago, I was reading over 100 books in a year, and I was also collecting a lot of books. Before I moved to Kansas, I bought books regularly, and I kind of just grabbed things I was excited about, things that sounded interesting to me in that phase of life. And after a couple of years of the turmoil of moving and the life changes of getting married and building a life and a home in this new place, I have not been reading. Now, I'm happy to say that I am back into the swing of reading, but for several years, like 2024 and 2023 were not good reading years for me. The amount of books I read in the past 2 years adds up to like 70 books, which is really low for me. And my life looks considerably different than it did when I purchased a lot of the books on my shelf. So when I scanned my shelves, I pulled down quite a few books that either I'd had for a long time and hadn't picked up, or just read the back of them and was like, there is never going to be a time where I'm interested in this again. And I don't know that for sure, but it feels really silly to keep a bunch of books and hold on to them even though I haven't been interested in them in the several years that I've owned them, when they could be utilized by someone who might enjoy them more than I did. So all the books I'm going to show are going to be donated to the local library and sort of enter back into the literary rotation. Now, that's not to say that I'm just trying to completely declutter and take everything that I haven't read off of my shelves. I would say that this is an exercise of mindfulness, and I'm doing this in part to make space and to kind of do an overhaul of my book collection, because I really do want to start buying books again, and I want to do it consciously this time instead of really just grabbing things and feeling the urge to buy books whenever I am interested in them. I want to utilize the library more. I want to use Libby more. I want to really think about the books that I'm purchasing and make better choices in how I'm consuming. So I know that there are going to be a few times during the spring that I'm going to be purchasing books. I am going to be going home and visiting New York this spring, and I am planning on visiting some New York City bookshops. My birthday is also in spring, so I know that I'm going to purchase books in the near future. So this is my way of kind of making room. So anyway, very long intro, but I wanted to explain a little bit about why I'm doing this and the intentionality behind it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first book that I'm unhauling is Like Me by Haley Phelan. So this is a book about obsession and social media, and a girl who is obsessed with someone online and obsessively tracking all of the moves of this internet personality and idolizing that person. So it's a book that it sounded really interesting to me initially, but I've had this for several years, and at this point, the writing style just doesn't seem like something I would jive with. As I like flipped through this and looked at it, it feels like a topic that I already know a lot about, and I've seen it play out in real lives. It was interesting to me when I bought it, obviously, but at the moment, it's just not something that's going to serve me. So I'm unhauling this one. Next up is The House Guest by Amparo de Villa. This is a book that I was really excited about it when I purchased it. It's translated, it's a short story collection, and I've heard good things about it. However, I looked at it and looked at the premises of the stories, and it's not something that's sparking a particular joy or interest right now. It doesn't feel like a book that I'm going to be picking up anytime soon, and I don't know that I am ever going to be prioritizing this. So as much as the premise and the overall vibe sounded like something I would enjoy, I just don't know that I'm going to pick this up. So I'm getting rid of The House Guest. Next is a book that I tried to read, and that's Quarter Life by Satya Doyle Bayek. This is an exploration of the search for self in the early 20s, and it talks about stability types and meaning types, and these two types of young people basically who are searching for different things in their 20s. It sounded like a really interesting premise to me. I started reading it hoping that it would shed some light on my experiences, and it just basically just follows therapy sessions that this author has with 20-somethings. And I just didn't find it to be particularly interesting to read or particularly relatable, even though it's supposed to be relatable for my age range. I just didn't find it to be a compelling read, and I don't know that I gleaned anything to take forward with me from the half of this book that I read. So I DNF'd it, and I'm gonna pass it along. Next up, I have a couple of memoirs. The first one is Haben by Haben Girma. This is the story of a deaf-blind woman who conquered Harvard Law. This is probably one of the books that I've owned for the longest amount of time. It has a little sticker from the bookstore in the town that I went to college in. I'm very interested in deaf culture and the experiences of deaf people. However, I've had this book for a long time. It's never been a priority read for me, and I just don't know that I am likely to pick this up. So I think it's just taking space on my shelf, and I'm gonna unhaul it. Next up, we have Fruit Punch by Kendra Allen. This book is so gorgeous, and I think I mostly bought it because of the cover. It sounded like an interesting premise. I did pick this one up and start reading it, and I really struggled to get into the style of the writing. It's written in a very distinctive voice, and I think that I would have benefited from the audiobook. So I think when a book is written in such a distinctive voice, it's kind of nice to actually hear it as opposed to reading it on a page. And I just really struggled to dig into this book, partly because of the writing and partly because I was in a reading slump at the time. So this is not something that I can see myself sitting and reading, though if I was ever able to get this on Libby as an audiobook, then I might give it a second try. Next up, I have Morning Star by Anne Hood. This is an essay collection about growing up with books, and I've had this for quite a while, have never been inclined to pick it up, and as I'm flipping through, I'm just not particularly inspired by the subjects and the books that she's talking about, and yeah, I just don't think this is going to be a priority read for me, so unhauling Morning Star. I feel like I'm saying similar things for each of these books, but it is kind of hard to talk about books that you're unhauling because you don't really have much to say about them, especially when it's books that you haven't read. Next up, I have The Hatred of Poetry by Ben Lerner. Same kind of thing. This is like a short essay type of book. And yeah, just feeling uninspired by the writing of this. And basically for each of these books, I will say that I did flip through and try to read a few pages and get an idea of what the writing was going to be like and the subject matter, just to confirm that it wasn't something that I was going to be interested in. And yeah, this is just not something that I'm particularly excited about. It's very academic. And I'm kind of not in that phase of my life where I'm super interested in academic takes on poetry or literary criticism, so this is not a book that I can see myself picking up. Next up, we have The Life of the Mind by Christine Smallwood. This is a pretty quintessential sad girl, unhinged girl type of read. It felt really cookie cutter when I started reading it. I don't even remember how far I got, maybe 50 pages into it, but it just really did not feel particularly unique. And when I started this book, I think it was 2022, it was before I moved, so quite a while ago. But I was reading so many weird women books at the time, and if I was going to continue reading it and continue enjoying it, it really needed to be something that was unique, or the character was particularly compelling. It needed something to make it stand out, and this just felt like a very standard weird woman book. It's kind of funny that I got to the point where I had read so many weird women books that this just felt average, even though typically weird women books are not the average. Probably not going to pick this one up again, so I am unhauling it. Next up, we have The Unchangeable Spots of Leopards by Christopher Jansma. He was actually one of my professors at college, and he did a really awesome creative nonfiction class that I loved. However, the premise of this book is not super interesting to me. I've also had it since college, and I bought it just because I was excited that I was taking a class with someone who is a published author. So I bought this and put it on my shelf and never read it. So don't think I'm going to be getting to this anytime soon. So I'm gonna pass it along. Okay, I suppose that I lied when I said that I had not read any of these books, because this is the one book that I have read, and it's With Teeth by Kristen Arnett. I love this cover. I loved Kristen Arnett's other book, Mostly Dead Things, and I read this several years ago. It was kind of a middling book for me, so I didn't feel like I needed to immediately unhaul it, so I did keep it around for quite a while, but I'm feeling like I'm never gonna come back to this, so why am I keeping it? Okay, moving right along, I have two books by Lauren Groff. I have The Matrix and Florida. It's kind of funny that I ended up with two books by Lauren Groff, but yeah, neither of these premises sound particularly interesting, and they're both available through Libby as an audiobook, and I'm much more likely to get through it if it's an audiobook. So I don't really feel the need to have the physical copies of these around. so I'm going to donate them. Next up, I have a couple of short story collections. First, I have Verge by Lydia Yuknevich. I love the cover. This was totally a cover buy when I bought it. I guess just the overall themes of the short story collection don't appeal to me anymore. It also doesn't have like a clear through line from what the blurb says. It's just kind of assorted short stories, and I just am not feeling excited about it. So yeah. The other short story collection is We Want What We Want by Alex Olin. I feel similarly about this to the other book. It just doesn't feel like it has a really strong through line that I'm excited about. And when I was flipping through and looking at the titles of the stories and just reading a few pages, nothing really spoke to me or stuck out to me. So yeah, I've had this for a while. I don't think I'm gonna get to it, so passing it along. And the final two books for my unhaul are Creature by Amina Kane. So I bought this right after I read Indelicacy because I really loved Indelicacy at the time and just wanted to dive back into her writing style. However, I recently tried to reread Indelicacy and I wasn't feeling excited about the story in that moment. So yeah, it just doesn't feel very inspiring to me, and I kind of am a little bit turned off to Amina Kane's writing at the moment. So yeah, I'm gonna see if someone else might enjoy it more than I did. And finally, I have The Novelist by Jordan Castro. The premise of this sounded really interesting when I picked it up. It is about a novelist and his kind of day-to-day life in his apartment, I believe. But it's just like reflections on what he's doing throughout his day. And I tried to start reading this and I really aggressively did not like the writing, which is kind of funny because it's a book about a writer. The writing was just really on the nose and it lacked any complexity or nuance. And that's just not something that I enjoyed, and I just don't see myself trying again with this book. So I'm going to unhaul it. So those are all the books that I'm unhauling in preparation for this bookshelf overhaul, and I'm gonna pack these up and bring them to the library to donate. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.